can't help but feel good. I can't help but feel fine. Everything is in its place and everything is mine. I can't help but feel good. I can't help but feel fine. Everything is in its place and all of it is mine. Ooh, I can't help but smile. Ooh, I can't help but smile. I'm reinventing myself. I'm me and nobody else. I'm reinventing myself. I'm me and nobody else. Ooh, I can't help but smile. Ooh, I can't help but smile. Ooh, I can't help but smile. 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 I can't help but smile.
John Adams said the two-party system is the greatest political evil under our Constitution. George Washington cautioned in his farewell address against excessive political party spirits and geographical distinction. Wise words. They tell us what to do about it? They did not. They just said it, then they died. Now they left us to figure it out. It's not an infallible document the way people try to make it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of room for error in there.
Yeah.
And contradiction, and later on. But again, as you know, it was not meant to just stay that way. It was supposed to be developed every 20 years or so, and people just got lazy and said, you know what? We're not going to do it.
This would be like if you had the old Apple computer 1.0 and you never got a software update
Right.
for 200 years. We've never had a constitutional convention.
It's-
If there was one, we'd cover it.
Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. And oh boy, almost timed it perfectly. But not quite. It's 10:59 Eastern Time, which means we are 1 minute early, which means do a little vamping. How you doing? How is the night going? Hello, Wicked Foxy Dragon. Colin Chief Quinn B. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I love Colin Quinn. I have loved him since the SNL days, man. That's when I first was first introduced to the fella. I liked the job he did on Weekend Update. Delighted to see that he's making the rounds again these days. Oh, well, look, last stream, bit of a bummer. But I don't want to get you down. Because truth be told, the good guys are winning. I mean, W after W after W. Unfortunately, most of those victories, they happen in reality. That's sort of our arena, and that's where we have to drag a lot of folks back into. So when we're racking up these W's, it can be easy not to appreciate them for what they are. So I thought we'd take this stream and just appreciate some of the recent developments that happened today. Remember, as quickly as these scandals are coming in, that's about how quickly that we are now racking up victories, which means, as you have heard, scandal after scandal, travesty after travesty, you're going to be hearing about victory after victory and the steps along the way. We are going to start it off with something. It's from a little bit back, but let's look at the people fighting the good fight. I believe this was suggested by our own Wicked Foxy Dragon, and I gotta say it's a good one. It is it's a great example of the new breed of politicians that have been put in office, I think in large part due to in large part as a reaction to the madness that was put into office just before him. And I think it's an example of the way things are going to start going more and more. Because these folks that have got a taste for politics now, that have decided to get involved, and the American voting public, it's not going to go back. They're not going to say, you know what I'd like? I'd like incompetent politicians again. No. They're here to stay, and it's a damn good sign. Whereas the people they're up against right now, they're definitely going away. So let's talk about it. Well, as I was telling the live audience, what we call the Wicked Senate, this new breed of politicians that's out there fighting the good fight and going toe-to-toe with MAGA psychopaths, they were largely put in office as a reaction to the insanity that we've been experiencing since 2015. And the reality is, all that GOP insanity, it's just the mask-off version of what these folks were doing anyway. We now have anti-trans hatred that is just rampant, and we have people talking about Jewish space lasers. Okay. But don't forget the strides that were made right before that, like, for example, legalizing gay marriage. Took us all the way till the 21st century, God help us. There had to be a force that was being fought against. It was the GOP. That is where America has had its evil tendencies represented. And the insanity that this new breed of politician, these young bucks who are out there racking up victories for the good guys, they're not going to go away. But I'll tell you, either in handcuffs or with heads hung low, MAGA will, because they are a clown show. But this new breed, these genuine progressives, these Democrats who actually know how to have a rough conversation and how to respond to the nonsense that we've been having to put up with for, 7 years now, 8 years now. They're here to stay. Let's have a look at, and this video, by the way, I believe submitted by our own Wicked Foxy Dragon. Thank you very much, Foxy. Let's have a look at how they're doing.
I don't know about you, Madam Speaker, but I know I go out to eat a whole lot less now than I did a few years ago because the cost, thanks to the president's administration's inflation, has either doubled or tripled at my favorite restaurants. And that means these folks are earning fewer tips from me, their usual customer.
This bill is only going to result in the cost of...
I mean, we got to let this guy get after it, but let's just be honest. That guy's not tipping. That's the kind of guy that writes something corny in the line that says tip, like, rotate your tires. That's who that is. And that's also the sort of person who would simultaneously insist that waiters and waitresses not get paid a living wage and instead must rely on his non-existent generosity.
Playing miniature golf to rise. Raising the minimum wage won't force corporate America to pay more. If large corporations aren't already raising their wage, they'll simply pass that cost on to consumers.
We keep hearing from folks that this is economically smart to have a starvation level wage. Maybe it is in some factory in another country where they're not paying workers what they ought to be paid. But here we should not say paying workers less than what they deserve is a part of a good economic strategy.
Boom.
It frankly makes no sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Love it.
Maria.
Also, let me add in my own 2 cents. Have a little pride in your country. I want to go talk about some countries around the world because a lot's cropped up in the UK that I want to talk about. Certainly, we're going to talk about Ukraine tonight. But Americans, have a little pride in your country. The way you ask the wait staff at a restaurant to live, that's the way you're saying that Americans should be forced to live. Do you really want to live in a country where the poorest among us are utter wretches, literally selling blood to get by? They call it plasma donating. But you sell it. They hook you up. You know I'm talking from experience. They hook you up to a machine. It pulls the blood out of your body, spins it around really fast so that plasma's taken out, and then pushes blood back into your body and keeps the plasma. And you can do that, if I recall correctly, when I was getting started in the news business, you can do that once every 2 weeks. And I have the scars in my arm forever. I look like a former a heroin connoisseur. You have the scars in your arm forever if you do it enough to prove it. Is that really something that makes you proud of your country? It shouldn't. You should be embarrassed if people got to live like that, but they're still out there working in your country. Just a thought, but let's let these stars have their moment in the sun. Come on, they're kicking butt. They deserve it.
Antoinette, if she was still alive, would have loved so much of this debate. Because a lot of it really sums up as just let them eat cake.
Boom.
Who cares about the struggling workers who are at home right now who are really only asking one question?
Boom.
Why has it taken us this long?
Yes, sir.
Why?
Redeeming some of Pennsylvania's honor is Malcolm Kenyatta. Well done.
Why has it taken us this long?
Guy back there is loving it, and he should be. Yes, sir.
So many of the arguments that you've heard today, they are difficult to decipher because, in my opinion, Mr. Speaker, they don't make a lot of sense. So in one breath, you've heard, Mr. Speaker, from previous speakers that nobody pays the minimum wage. Everybody pays above the minimum wage. If that is true, then what fear do you have of raising the minimum wage?
Ah, yes, sir.
We've also heard, Mr. Speaker, that raising the minimum wage, the Chicken Little song and dance is out again, the sky is gonna fall, there will be no more jobs. Why hasn't that happened in West Virginia? Why hasn't that happened in Ohio?
Yes, sir.
Why hasn't that happened in Delaware? Why hasn't that happened in New Jersey?
Get him.
Why hasn't that happened in New York?
Woo.
Why haven't we seen our border states flooding in to Pennsylvania because we still pay $7.25, which really we should stop calling a minimum wage. It is a starvation level wage. It is unconscionable. It's unconscionable.
Yes,
a part of what drives our economy's growth is in large part consumer spending. What is going to happen if we raise the minimum wage? There are going to be a lot of folks who are going to actually have a little bit of wiggle room to go out and eat at that restaurant.
Now look, how long has it been since you have heard a politician who's genuinely making sense, who's making arguments that you can follow. It's not a bunch of jargon and nonsense. It's based in reality, talking about what will actually affect you. If you've got a small business, you should want the minimum wage raised. Because odds are, if your business is small, your customers are the sort of folks who will have more money to spend with you if the minimum wage gets raised. Unless you're out there selling, if you have a Lexus dealership, maybe not. Maybe you won't directly benefit. But yes, Malcolm Kenyatta from Pennsylvania's, I didn't see what district, 100, I don't know, from Pennsylvania. Beautifully put. Excellent argument. And in my opinion, quite correct. He is one of many. We got the Tennessee Three. We got folks in the squad. In my district, we have Rashida Tlaib. In New York, we've got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. In Florida, we've got Maxwell Frost. We've got John Fetterman. Oh my God, in New Jersey? Yeah, I think he's in New Jersey. We have a new breed of politician that's out there kicking ass. These folks, by and large, are going to get reelected because they're doing a damn good job. And the other folks have the burden, the folks he's speaking out against right there, have the burden of trying to sell their voters on more misery. Whereas this gentleman is offering a path out, and he is able to articulate the case, and he's actually sincere about it, and that makes all the difference. Those are not the arguments you make if you're a centrist Dem who's trying to please your donors who would very much like American slavery to continue. Wage slavery, where you're paid a pittance. This is a great sign, folks, and a wonderful suggestion.
Somebody's going to be able to buy the basic supplies and necessities, which is what most low-wage workers do. They invest that money right back into their communities, buying things like food for their families, buying things like clothes for their kids who are getting ready to go back to school. I know they just got out, but parents are waiting for them to go back into school very soon.
Yes, indeed.
We know that right now, we're in a position to do what has not been done in this body. And today you're hearing from the minority party all the things that we could do in lieu of raising the minimum wage that could help low-wage workers. You had over a decade, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it? But now when we're bringing up...
Good God, I'm showing my ignorance. The man's a senator? He's a senator and he's talking like this? That's a real good sign. That's a better sign than I was even saying. I was talking about House members before. That's good. That's real good.
Up an actual solution. You have all the part-time economists who want to come in and tell us what this is going to do for our economy. What this is going to do, plain and simple, is to say that every job has a level of dignity, and that dignity should be reflected in the paycheck.
Beautiful.
That dignity should be reflected in the paycheck. And I want to make one final point, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about the economy. The economy is not this amorphous thing that we are just supposed to be here at the altar of. The economy is people. The economy that we're talking about is people. People who right now, too often than not, don't even have enough savings to cover an accident on their car or a medical expense should it happen. People who've had to work more than one job because $725 is not nearly enough. People who are sick and tired of politicians promising to do something and never delivering. Well, guess what? House Democrats are delivering. I urge a yes vote.
Okay, correction again. Never mind, it's worse than I thought. He's a state representative, but still. Those are the kind of voices that you're seeing. I thought he was a little young to be a senator. That you're seeing throughout the country. That has been the extraordinarily positive reaction to the MAGA terrorist branch of the GOP criminal organization. I gotta tell you, in this era of actually holding politicians accountable because they just gave us no choice, sad that this is why, sad that that the Department of Justice had to be forced to act because otherwise wasn't going to exist anymore. But in this era where you're actually seeing consequences for the despicable behavior that the GOP has put on for its entire existence, the lawlessness of MAGA, reaction has been positive on the political front, and you're just not going to see in this era of honest politics. It's hard for me to even fathom those folks sticking around forever and ever. They're already, look at how desperate they are. Look at what the death of the Republican Party looks like. It looks like Jewish space lasers lady. It looks like Lauren Boebert arguing with her on the House floor. It looks like Republicans making wild accusations and then being unable to produce the witnesses they said their case hinged on. That's what the death of the Republican Party looks like. And that space is not being filled by a different kind of evil. It's being filled by what we actually needed, which is politicians that are trying to help. A wild idea, I know. They're actually trying to help, and God bless them. Well done, Pennsylvania State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. That was by that piece, by the way, was by TYT Investigates, a fantastic branch of the Young Turks. And thank you, Wicked Foxy Dragon, for the suggestion. Let's see what the Wicked community has to say. Mars Falcon. Go Giants, John Bailey. North Bay here, raised in, Mendocino County, up in Humboldt for now. Nice and cool like the Bay. Ooh, nice. Nice. Oh, Unfriendly Atheist. Hello, humans. Hello there. Christy Zolkowski. Hello to you. Rock and roll indeed. Velocity. Oh, Mars Falcon. Velocity of Money 101. The lowest income earners spend the largest portion of that money immediately. Yep. I can tell you from experience, news industry ain't exactly buying you sports cars. That's 100% true. Can't hold on to $1. Yeah, it's good for the economy for the poorest among us to get money. It's been proven time and time again. It was shown in hyper focus with the pandemic. Unfortunately for us, it required these things, but the upside to the pandemic and the upside even to the financial crisis in 2008 was that we saw how these things work by their failures. And these are lessons that we all had to live through. They actually affected our lives, and so we actually had to learn them. Wasn't like the gas crisis in the 70s, where there was X many degrees of separation between cause and effect. It wasn't like the boom in the 80s, where it seemed like everybody was making money, just no one you knew. This has been a tumultuous time, but it's been an educational one, and it hurts like hell right now. No doubt about it. But we are learning. And we are, those of us who tend to vote blue appear to have learned, by and large. We, of course, have to keep it going. We need more people like that, like Malcolm Kenyatta. In your state, pay attention to who the progressives are. If you want positive change in your community, pay attention. Get them in the primaries. That is where you are going to have your state level and the primaries in your state. That is where you're going to have the most effect. I mean, in terms of your life. I'm living it right now. It's real nice feeling like Michigan has a layer of safety in these insanity-filled times. It feels really nice. You can have that too. It takes less votes than you might think. It takes less effort than you might think, but it does take consistent effort. So sing the praises of those progressives. Be on the lookout for them. 2024 is going to be potentially the best year in American politics in centuries. But it'll take that extra bit of effort. It's going to be so tempting to relax. It's going to be very tempting to relax. But we have good news on that front. The fight will be easier than it would have been after a recent Supreme Court decision. I cannot wait to share this with you. Now, I wasn't sure if I wanted to show you which adorable, besuited lefty I wanted to show you. Brian Tyler Cohen or Chris Hayes. I did know I wanted a smart suit on this. But joking aside, we got some great news. Let's talk about it. One thing that is going to make the upcoming political fight in 2024 a hell of a lot easier is that, oh hey, our government finally decided to settle that question. You know, that thing that was supposed to have always been known to be true? That local tyrants can't just decide our votes don't mean anything? That was the question posed by Trump, for which the answer should have been, by everyone he asked it to, of course not. Unfortunately, we had to worry about laws being written and purposefully wrongly interpreted, existing laws being purposely wrongly interpreted, to make it possible for local autocrats to just decide that your vote doesn't matter. That would have been bad. And I'll tell you, that would have made, for example, the upcoming fight in Texas, we're going to try to turn that puppy blue in 2024, would have made it a hell of a lot harder. Boy, have I got some good news for you. Let's look at Mr. Chris Hayes.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. It is not
Hey, Chris.
often the case these days, but today, the Supreme Court issued a long-anticipated, monumental ruling that actually bolsters America's democratic strength. Now, the case before the court today contained at its core an idea that was central to the Donald Trump scheme to overturn the 2020 elections. The question of whether state legislatures can do whatever they want in elections, up to and including simply appointing electors to their preferred candidate, even when the citizens of their state vote the other way. Trump's lawyers pushed the idea that Republican legislators in all kinds of states could simply ignore the will of the people in states that voted for Joe Biden and opt instead to send their own fake electors, Trump electors, to Congress. It was fake electors in 7 swing states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, and Nevada, that in coordination with the Trump campaign sought to overthrow the election results.
Side note, and talking about what we discussed earlier in the previous stream on this 2 for Tuesday, 2 of those states right now have active investigations into the fake electors. The remaining 5, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada, they're leaving it up to Merrick Garland, who only just decided to get around to talking with Brad Raffensperger about the interference in Georgia 2 years after the fact, 2 years after the public knew about it. I realize that the line from these folks is that, well, we defer to our betters. We wouldn't want to bother the FBI. We wouldn't want to bother the Department of Justice, the federal government, with our investigations. Too bad. I would encourage you to encourage them to get off their duffs and go after the state electors. Patience in this matter is a sin, and we have already suffered from Merrick Garland doing a half-assed job. I don't care what you've been told about how difficult the job is. There is no combination of facts which makes it all right for our country to let 2 years go by without resolving this coup attempt. Bear that in mind, but I'm dropping the anger because this is good news and we should enjoy it as such.
Trump and his lawyer John Eastman, along with others, actively lobbied for and pushed this idea across multiple states, trying, in fact, to get state legislatures to abandon their core Democratic duty and choose instead a path to essentially crown Trump king. Here's the former Speaker of the Arizona House, Republican conservative Rusty Bowers, describing a 2020 call he got from Trump coup lawyer John Eastman.
And what did Dr. Eastman want you to do?
That we would, in fact, take a vote to overthrow, or I shouldn't say overthrow.
No, you should, but go on.
That we would decertify the electors, and that because we had plenary authority to do so. And I said, what would you have me do? And he said, just do it and let the court sort it out.
Plenary authority, absolute, total authority. The state legislators have total authority over who wins an election.
Now look, I'll let him go finish this up, but I want to stress that has always been the way MAGA approaches things. And even though it is not right for Trump to do it in that case, we should take a page out of that book. Because a lot of times we let the way our laws work be decided in the margins, in the little ways they can be interpreted just so here and just so there. So it constantly, coincidentally, steers away from actually holding anyone powerful to account. The just do it and let the courts sort it out is actually a fine thing to say when you are talking about an actual principle. In this case, Trump was simply trying to overturn an election. He wasn't approaching this honestly. But when you're dealing with something like, say, oh, hey, people are getting shot through doors when they knock on them. Arrest the shooter. If it turns out the court interprets them as being not guilty, okay. But we need to start demanding things with that mindset. Look, if it really is legal to do what this person did, this abhorrent behavior, fine. You explain to me why. I'm just saying, take a page out of their book.
I have new reporting from the Washington Post that special counsel Jack Smith has taken a keen interest in the fake electors plot, focusing specifically on potential fraud.
Finally getting
New York
around to that,
Times
huh?
recently reported that one of the Trump campaign's key players in the scheme may actually be cooperating with federal prosecutors. And tomorrow, Republican Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who Trump infamously called and told to find roughly 11,000 votes to overturn the Georgia results, will meet with federal prosecutors for, as far as we know, the first time on the special counsel's team in Atlanta. We're going to have more on the special counsel's investigation and the rapid developments coming up. But again, at the core of Trump's attempted coup, and there's a bunch of things going on, but at its core, as articulated by John Eastman, as he told Rusty Bowers, is this bizarre, to my mind, facially ludicrous fringe idea that conservatives ran with after their scheme failed to return Trump to the White House. It's called the independent state legislature theory, although calling it a theory gives it a little too much credit. And it would give state legislatures plenarily, virtually unchecked power over federal elections. It was an idea infamously pushed by coup memo author John Eastman and his allies in Congress. Basically says state legislatures are the ultimate arbiters of how elections are run in a state, no matter what state law or state officials or, crucially, state courts say.
All we are demanding of Vice President Pence is this afternoon at 1 o'clock, he let the legislatures of the state look into this so we get to the bottom of it and the American people know whether we have control of the direction of our government or not.
Everybody on screen right now needs to be in prison. They did that in front of cameras. No excuse for them not being in prison. What the hell? Let's toss me in there too. Fine. If that's what's necessary, if you just have to make it even by getting a lefty somehow arrested as well, fine. Toss me in. What the hell? Those dudes got to be in prison. That was a coup done in front of cameras. I was calling it that as it happened because that's what it was. You're not crazy for thinking that sure sounds like a crime. That sure looks like a crime. That sure does seem like they're trying to overthrow my vote. You're not crazy. You're right. And if it pisses you off that the Department of Justice is just now getting around to this, you should be. But the good news is, it should piss you off, but the good news is they are getting around to it. In large part because of your dissatisfaction. Because folks like you have been loud about this. Folks like you have said, hey, we're noticing this time. We're not going to let this be another Nixon, another Reagan, another George H.W. Bush, another George W. Bush. We're not going to let this happen because we cannot afford to. All of our souls might be damned for eternity for letting those other guys go. Maybe. I don't know. But we're not letting these ones go. Congratulations to you. Truly. For being loud and for not permitting evil to go unpunished. And great news, I don't see a scenario where those folks get away with this. The only one I could have conceived of, by the way, was if this case had gone another way. And states would have been allowed to, have the people currently in power just decide if they want to stay in power, regardless of what the people say. But as Chris Hayes is reporting, Supreme Court said no. They want to live in, an actual non-dictatorship. Probably a good call on their part.
This is bigger than President Trump. It is the very essence of our Republican form of government, and it has to be done. And anybody that is not willing to stand up to do it does not deserve to be in the office. It is that simple.
That was the speech at the Ellipse right before an angry mob went to the Capitol and bashed a bunch of cops' brains in. The insurrection on January 6th failed in its goal to subvert democracy. It failed to keep Donald Trump in office for a second term. But in many ways, the spirit of the coup, of Donald Trump's multi-pronged plan to overturn the election results, continued and continues. I mean, we've seen in state after state, like Arizona, Georgia, and Texas, Republicans stripping power from state elections officials, and candidates vowing to abolish bipartisan election commissions in states like Wisconsin. So this time, it wasn't a violent mob, but politicians, locally elected officials at the state level, trying to carry out a version of Eastman's vision, right? To take power back from any official that has it delegated and give it all to the state legislatures so that they can run elections entirely. Not coincidentally, those are also the places where Republicans have a lot of control. And they've been doing it right in front of all of us. I mean, we were covering it back in May of 2021. In Arizona, Republican state legislators stripped Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, a Democrat, of her ability to defend election lawsuits. And it gave the power to who? Well, exclusively to the Attorney General, a Republican. We are watching essentially a slow motion insurrection being carried out by Republicans in suits and ties in states all across the country. They are putting the pieces in place to do in the next elections what the mob failed to do on January 6th.
Well put then. I'm glad he's bringing it back now. That is 100% accurate. But it didn't work.
And that slow motion insurrection, this idea from the right wing that the power of self-governance does not sit in the hands of the people, the idea that the power and oversight of elections belongs to basically Republican self-gerrymandered majorities in the state level, that idea, that core idea, is the subject of today's monumental Supreme Court ruling. The case is out of the state of North Carolina. It's called Moore v. Harper. And in it, North Carolina Republicans argued that this independent state legislature theory gave them virtually unchecked power over elections.
The lawmakers' argument hinges on a political concept called the independent state legislature theory, based on the Constitution's election clause saying the time, place, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. So if the court lands on the side of North Carolina House Speaker Tim Moore and his Republican colleagues, Fredrickson explains it could mean state legislatures can act independently and governors and state courts would have no ability to check laws related to federal election.
Well, today in a 6-3 ruling, the Supreme Court rejected that extreme and dangerous legal theory, not to say one completely unfounded in the text of the Constitution. The case centers around an extremely aggressive partisan North Carolina congressional map drawn by Republicans in the state legislature, very gerrymandered, using 2020 census data. And it's a map that would give Republicans up to 10 seats in the House. In early 2022, the North Carolina Supreme Court threw out that gerrymandered map and rejected Republicans' arguments that state courts had no role to play in drawing congressional maps. And then conservatives tried to go over the state court's head, challenged the ruling on the cart, and went to the Supreme Court to argue that the Constitution gives them and only them, us in the state legislature, the only and total power over how we draw congressional maps. State courts don't matter. Well, today, the conservative Supreme Court that Donald Trump is responsible for shaping plainly rejected this radical and, dare I say it, kooky notion. Chief Justice John Roberts authored the 6-3 opinion with both Trump-appointed Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett siding with the liberals. Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch dissented. In his opinion, for the majority, Chief Justice wrote that, quote, legislatures, the framers recognized, are the mere creatures of the state constitutions and cannot be greater than their creators. Meaning, the state government as a whole functions to oversee elections. If there's a state constitution that's interpreted by state courts, they get a say. State legislatures aren't some like special magical power that overrules everything in the state. That's ludicrous. This is the second pro-democracy ruling from this very right-wing court this term alone. Remember, a few weeks ago, they also upheld, crucially, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and struck down a flagrantly biased Alabama congressional map. And I can't read the minds of the justices, particularly Roberts and Kavanaugh, who are the majority in both opinions, but I have to think the sustained focus amongst the press and civil society and politicians on the very real...
All right. Let's just let him wrap it up. But, make a note of the names of who dissented. Alito, Thomas, and Gorsuch. Make a note of that.
Indeed, existential threats to the American experiment as posed by John Eastman, Donald Trump, and his movement. The focus on that has shaped the court's thinking, and thank goodness for that.
Isn't it just telling? Isn't it just telling that the justices with the most corruption scandals particularly I'm thinking Alito and Thomas, were the ones who were dissenting in that opinion. Were the ones who seemed to be okay with the United States becoming, what, a dictatorship? I don't even know what you describe it. A minoritarian rule. Long term, we got to get rid of those guys. Way to do that is to put a code of ethics in the Supreme Court and possibly, just maybe, get some court cases going against them. But you know what? First and foremost, we need to take 100% of power back. We need there to be no majorities for Republicans who have demonstrated that they are not interested in a democracy. They're not interested in the will of the people, in other words. No majorities for Republicans in the House, in the Senate, or they cannot have control of the White House. They got to be gone entirely. And this needs to be the end of this criminal organization. Great news, because sanity won the day. It's going to be a hell of a lot easier now. It might just be down to a regular old standard corrupt fight against gerrymandered in their favor party. But that's okay. We've won that fight before. We're going to win it again. And hopefully this will be the last time we have to win it against these devils. Let's see what the wicked community has to say. Ooh, what have I done? There we go. Mars. Oh. Ha! John Bailey. Don't trust Thomas and Alito. Yes, indeed. Christy Zilkowski. Yep, nailed it. The anti-corporatist. I don't need a note. I know who they are. Yeah. Wicked Foxy Dragon. Much appreciated. If you haven't already, please do hit that thumbs up button. John Bailey. Should Biden pack the Supreme Court? It's a great question. I think so. Personally, I realize what the arguments against it are. This is one of the rare times where I think we do need to shake up the rules to make up for corruption that has, frankly, truly hurt the country. I do acknowledge that we can't change the rules every time we don't like the outcome. But we also have to live in reality and acknowledge that we've been playing against a team that has utterly ignored the rules. And if we are waiting for a moral justification that is satisfactory for current Republican voters, we are going to be waiting forever. There will be no such thing. They're not interested in morality. They're not interested in principle. They are purely interested in taking. So we need to take back. That is my opinion. That said, I don't have a very... it's not very nuanced. And there might be other better ways to achieve the same thing. So I would say the only thing I really commit to in that idea is that we need to change the balance of the court. Either by literally booting off Alito and Thomas. It's not impossible to remove a Supreme Court justice. It just takes a tremendous amount of agreement amongst political parties. All of this stuff is going to happen after the 2024 election. That much I am sure about. So it should be a priority. We should fix the court. And hey, I'm also down with just doing things like term limits for all of them. I'm fine with that as well. But we do need to attend to it, and I think it's a good question. Oh. Let's enjoy a bit of Schadenfreude here. Because our old pal over at Raw News and Politics. Afraid I never remember the gal's name. I just know the channel. She's back with a report I very much wanted to see, which is that Trump is sweating. He's having what is known in the literary, amongst the great literary classics, as a terrible, no good, very bad day, which means I'm loving it. Ooh, yes. Let's record this puppy. Raw News and Politics is back. Friend of the channel. Usually covers the goings-on regarding court cases, particularly surrounding one Mr. Donald Trump. And apparently, for some reason, he's nervous that Mark Meadows is talking to the DOJ. Now, I don't know. It's strange to me. I would think he would want his name cleared. After all, there's some heavy accusations against him surrounding, that attempted coup that it sure looks like he did. I would assume he would want his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, to get in there, put his hand on a Bible, and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury, and exonerate him. Wouldn't you think that that's what he wants? Apparently, for some reason, he's very nervous, Donald Trump is, that Mark Meadows is talking to the DOJ. Here's Raw News and Politics talking about it.
Welcome to the show. So Trump world is freaking out about Mark Meadows, according to a recent Rolling Stone article. According to a source who spoke with the news outlet, Trump directed some of his attorneys and advisors to go on a, quote, fact-finding mission earlier this year. He wanted them to find out what Meadows was up to. That was a direct quote. What's he up to? And he did this because Trump and others started to get worried because Meadows and his attorney cut off all communication with them months ago. So according to this source, they went out searching. They came up empty-handed, though, and they could only provide him with speculation and rumors that they were hearing. And then after Meadows' attorney issued that statement, you guys have probably all heard, saying, oh, my client is telling the truth when obligated to do so. Apparently, Trump world started using a rat emoji in their text messages in place of Meadows' name.
Wait a minute. This guy's out there telling the truth? He's ratting us out. Well, doesn't that just tell you? Doesn't that just tell you about their consciousness of guilt? He's out there telling the truth. Oh, no! Not, oh, okay. Well, he says he's out there telling the truth. Thank God. No. Very, very different reaction, it would seem.
Stone said they actually saw a screenshot of one of these text messages.
Oh.
And Trump land is pissed about Meadows' book. The book Meadows thought was going to be widely received, with praise. He said that Donald Trump would love it. I mean, he just was so excited about this memoir that he put out because it's like a love letter to Trump. But it ended up providing the special counsel with very damning evidence against Trump, which in part led to his recent indictment in the classified documents case, right? That's where this.
Including the recording that I didn't even bother playing for you because we've already read the transcript. That came from Mark Meadows' book.
Infamous recording came from. So this was all around the end of 2021. Well, by the summer of 2022, Meadows and his people started to become paranoid about what Trump was planning. Rolling Stone spoke with someone who knows both of them, both Trump and Meadows, and this person said that Meadows and people around him started to believe that Meadows was going to be set up to take the fall. He was going to be the fall guy for January 6th. So we'll see where this all ends, but it's pretty clear Meadows' only way out is to cooperate against Trump. And as I shared with you guys recently, some people believe that has already been taking place, that they've already secured a cooperation deal. Now, in the meantime, as you all know, Trump is doing a great job of destroying his own defense. He did that Fox News interview with Bret Baier, who surprisingly did a good job. He pretty much held Trump's feet to the fire.
Well, nope, didn't mean to do that. Look, Meadows is right. Trump will absolutely try to throw him under the bus. Also, he's going to try to make him seem like Jafar. You know, whispering in the king's ear and what have you. Sultan's ear. But I think next up is probably Eastman, followed by Giuliani, in terms of people who will get buses thrown their way. But the thing is, Trump is just too easy. It's not even, and you have to appreciate this when you're trying to predict what the FBI will do, what the whole Department of Justice will do. I mean, all. Remember that they are employees, and they don't want to work particularly hard, even though it is in their nature to try to cover up for powerful people, as we have seen throughout U.S. history. They also don't want to look foolish, and they cannot trust Trump to help them cover his butt, substantial though it may be. Meaning, if they pin this all on one of these henchmen, Trump's going to turn around and brag about it. They know this. They've investigated him. They have reluctantly investigated him enough to see that the real rat against Donald Trump is Donald Trump himself. So if Merrick Garland, who has now been, against his wishes, forced to investigate Donald Trump, tries to say that this is it turns out it was all Eastman, the very next day, Trump will say, you see, he shouldn't have listened to the orders that I gave him to do that coup. I was innocent. Let's let her keep going.
Well, according to Rolling Stone, again, Trump thought he did a great job in that interview, which is just absolutely LOL. It's just laughable.
Case in point.
Sources told the news outlet that some of Trump's current and former attorneys were absolutely horrified by that interview. But Trump is telling people, oh, yeah, I think I came off strong. I think I look good. So they also confirmed that Trump isn't clearing his media appearances with his legal team first.
Oh, Jesus.
That's a problem. But here's the thing. Trump and his attorneys are playing to two very different audiences, right? I mean, his legal team, of course, I mean, obviously they want to keep him quiet because they don't want to give any more ammunition to the prosecutor. Trump, on the other hand, is playing to a potential jury pool. He knows his supporters need only a vague explanation in order to excuse all of his illegal actions. That has been proven time and time again. We saw this recently. Jordan Sheridan of the Status Quo show. If you guys aren't subscribed, if you guys don't watch it, I highly recommend it. He went out.
Noted, I'll give that a listen. And also, what did she say there? It was such a good way to put it. They need only the vaguest excuse to excuse all of his actions, the weakest justification. That's true. Because they're not interested in the truth. They're interested in a story they can tell to explain why they believe what they believe. And they don't, from what I've seen, they don't expect to convince you. They just want to justify the things that they want to do anyway. I have a theory on why MAGA is the way it is. We'll talk about it probably on Wednesday. But they're not interested in what actually happened. And when they're listening to the coverage of these things, they're only listening for an excuse to say, an excuse to not change, an excuse to not admit they were wrong about this guy. And in fact, they weren't really wrong about him. That's what's really hard to swallow here. They know. They know what he is. I know what they say. They've demonstrated that they know the reality. So bear that in mind. And Trump is playing this for them. Because we are at the point where he is going to be facing, rather, a court. No, he's in the court system now. Only truth is permitted there. So he's got to pick a side, and he is picked to the chagrin of his lawyers. Really the only side that he can pick after January 6th, that coup failed, which is to try to push America into a full-on authoritarian dystopia. That's the only way he avoids punishment for his actions. And as Mary Trump has pointed out, he cannot fathom ever being held accountable for something that he's done. So, yeah, it makes perfect sense that he does not give a damn about how much he's hurting his court cases. He's only concerned about lasting until 2024 and cheating his way into the presidency, wherein you can bet he will dismantle the U.S. government. Played that last section first so you don't have a heart attack. It just became extraordinarily unlikely that it's going to pan out that way for him. Good. I hope he does not have a heart attack before justice is actually done.
Now, he interviewed Trump supporters at a Trump protest, not against Trump, for Trump. This was right after Trump's indictment, and it's mind-boggling, right? I mean, the videos are so revealing. To sum it up, the MAGA crowd, at least the people who are going out and protesting on Trump's behalf, they have no clue why he was indicted. I mean, they have a vague understanding, but they don't care. They don't care to look at the actual document. They refuse to read the indictment. They don't want to try to understand what he did wrong or how much evidence there is against him. They don't care. I mean, I've shared this with you guys before. I had an experience with a Trump supporter who literally physically ran away from me practically in a closed room because she refused to watch a video that Trump was in to see him laughing about shooting migrants. They don't want to know, but then they get upset if you call it a cult. And Trump knows this. He
does know it. And we should be aware of what a danger it is. And just because things got a whole lot better today, a whole lot better for our odds of winning in 24, doesn't mean we should fight any less hard. We have to fight, win, and win thoroughly. And the more we win now, the easier the entire rest of our lives will be. It is possible that we can do the vast majority of political work necessary to set ourselves up for a peaceful and prosperous future this year, as in the next 365 days. Let me extend that further, about 500 days from now until next November. We work our asses off now. Use the language. Our future asses, last time, I promise, will appreciate us. But what's the headline here? The headline is, it sure seems, I know he was calling him a rat, but it sure seems like Meadows is singing like a canary. And it's making Trump nervous. A way to really be sure that there's not anybody left on the fence, certainly no one even peeking at the Trump side, is to demonstrate that this guy tried a coup in the United States. And if you have Meadows, his chief of staff, singing to spare himself, trial might be quicker than you think. Let's see what y'all have to say. Just enjoy the popcorn on this one, folks. We earned it. Good Lord. Mars Falcon. Oh, good poll. Wiggy, wiggy, wiggy. What's up, Buck? Mars Falcon. Lee Majors was a huge part of my childhood. The $6 Million Man, yes, sir, was one of the coolest things I ever saw when I was a wee lad. That, Battlestar Galactica, and Buck Rogers. Yes, indeed. Oh, my word. Hello, Tamara Chance. Good to see you. Tens of millions, says Mars Falcon, of chuds follow Trump. Donald will be dead soon. Those people will remain. It's true. They will. And I think there's a lesson to be learned here. Yeah, we have an obligation, I think. We don't have to, but we have an obligation to try to convert where we can. In part because that helps define who's the good guys. And if we're constantly reaching our hand out, that's good. But we do also have to be wide-eyed. What do they call it? Clear-eyed about this. These folks that aren't interested in the facts, we have to acknowledge that we are going to have to show, not tell. And we're going to have to just start building a better country without them. And if they want to help, if they want to pitch in, if they want to help the good things keep making their lives better, they're welcome to. But we have to take advantage of the fact that decency remains the majority and win. And win and win and win. That is also going to mean taking folks that don't really pay attention to this stuff and make them pay attention, because it's deadly serious right now. Oh, anti-corporatist. Yes, indeed. Drive safe. Trail, maybe, but there are a lot of them. They're way too far gone for the matter. Sorry, Jake. Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, I would say don't break a sweat. You know? If they ask, just be ready to answer. That's as far as your obligation goes. If they ask, how will your side help me? Okay, be ready to answer. If they ask, why do you think Trump is a bad guy? Just be ready to answer. That's it. But no, I mean, don't feel like you got to wade into the massive ignorance and hold up a copy of the U.S. legal code and start citing things. You don't have to do that, and I wouldn't recommend trying, because it's exhausting. Unless you enjoy arguing, in which case, have at, Hoss. Wireless Mike, none of that matters to his cult, though. They'll drink the Flavor Aid and smile. Maybe. Here's the thing, and we may as well talk about it now since you're here now. Why? Oh, hell, I'll record this. Question is, why do these people support Trump so blindly? And believe it or not, a conversation about a role-playing video game really gave me some insight here. The video game was Fallout New Vegas. You don't have to be a gamer to understand this. The only relevant thing is that there are, as the main character of this game, one of the appeals is there are factions you can join. And because it's role-playing, you join the faction that you think's right for your character, person you want to play as. And there is the blatantly evil faction called Caesar's Legion. And an honest role player wrote into a community that's a big fan of this aging game and said, I can't think of a role play reason why you would join Caesar's Legion. Like, they're mustache-twirling villains, and they're not even nice to you. It's not like they're begging you to join them. They're mean to you. So why would you join them? And they clearly don't have they don't have a good plan for helping out the characters you meet along the way. Again, you don't have to be a gamer. This This is going somewhere political, I promise. The thing is, there's a whole community in the real world of folks that are big fans of Caesar's Legion, that play as a patsy of them every single time. They willingly join this. And wouldn't you just know it, the overlap with Trump voters is like close to 1-to-1. And that's telling, isn't it? How about mass shooters? Now we're back in the real world. People that commit suicide by committing mass murder. They either end their freedom for all time when they get arrested, or they get themselves killed in a shootout, or they do it themselves after doing the worst thing imaginable. What do they tend to be? Neo-Nazis, far-right extremists? Yeah, once in a while, there's somebody who doesn't really follow any politics. But we know what they tend to be, because we've seen it time and time again. What about domestic terrorists? If you're not counting mass shooters among those, yeah, same thing. What do all these things have in common? The people who are attracted to the mustache-twirling villain side in a video game, the people who terrorize the populations of the places they live. How about the people that support Putin? Not just pretend to be anti-war with Ukraine, like some of those on the left who get duped, I'm sorry to say, have been. But the people that actually support Putin, who do they tend to be? Well, surprise, surprise. Same group of folks. I have noticed there's another through line there, which is nihilism. And not really a deep philosophical nihilism, because you can even be an optimistic nihilist. You could choose to say that nothing matters, so why not be happy? That's not what I see, though. The through line that I see is that they believe life cannot get better for them. And their reaction is to make it worse for everybody else. When you look at it through that lens, their support of Trump makes so much sense, because he has been delivering what he has promised in between the lines. Chaos, destruction, making life worse for everybody. What would be, in the interest of justice, the appropriate reaction to that? They all go to prison. You know? Willfully making everything worse for everybody. What a terrible reaction. Okay. It's not really that practical, though. And justice ain't necessarily the same thing as morality or decency. Not always. As insufferably left as this is going to sound, I also think it is the most practical solution. The most practical solution is to forge ahead and make life better for them. You're not going to convince them to stop, and I'm not talking about, by the way, every single member of the GOP. There's all kinds of folks. There are the grifters, there are the grifted. There's all kinds of folks. But the core of Trump supporters, that person who ran away from the lady from Raw News and Politics, as talked about in the previous segment, the core of Trump supporters, in my observations so far, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts too, they are convinced that things can't get better for them, and they detest the idea that some other group of people, somebody other than them, might rise up, might be happy and flourish in their world. in the same planet as them. They cannot stand the idea. And the way to diffuse that is to take away the motivation. We talk all the time about showing them that they're traveling down the wrong road. But we don't really know how to motivate them elsewhere. Towards a better path, let's say. And we're going to have to show them. Because they have heard talk from our people, as well as, and by which I mean, by and large, these days, Democrats. They've heard a lot of talk, and they've heard talk from their people. And the only person they know of that's really delivered on what they've promised is Trump, because what he promised was heartache for everyone. So when we go out there and we say there's a better way, of course they don't believe us. Of course they think it's just words. As far as they know, they're always going to be lied to. They have been lied to. It's all lies. Even Trump is lying, but at least they can read his lies and they can understand his lies. And they'll memorize his lies. And they'll play along with his lies. And they'll help him fulfill his promise, which is destruction. And maybe they think on the other side of that destruction there's something better, but I don't really believe that. I just think their highest aspiration right now is to be the least miserable in a group of miserable people. I think that's it. So, as we get these victories that we have been discussing tonight, if we want this particular brand of opposition, this irrational, terrified, savage opposition to go away, to my chagrin, I will have to concede that the hippies were right. And that maybe not love is the answer, but kindness will be. We're just going to have to do a good job running the government. Life will have to improve. They will have to have money in their pocket because businesses are doing well and their health care hasn't bled them dry. So that on a Saturday night, they go take the family to see some movies instead of going to a fasci rally. And the good news is we're already doing what's necessary to accomplish that. But if we're talking about what causes this, I think it's the nihilism. And if we're talking about what cures it, lefty politics. Making the world a better place to be in so they don't want to burn it down. That was an impromptu segment. Christy Zilkowski, I'm hoping once Trump goes to prison, his supporters will be so lost they walk off into the ocean. Yeah, it'd be like denazification, says John Bailey. Not wrong. Yeah, Wireless Mike, the people who root for the heel in pro wrestling. Absolutely. Christy Zilkowski, show the pictures of the bodies after these mass shootings if you want change. Put that part on the nightly news. Images of the true horror is the shock treatment America needs. I agree. Wireless Mike, I get that, but I'm afraid you're not taking into account the very real percentage of the population who want to watch the world burn because they actually enjoy the cruelty. They exist. Yeah, and I don't deny that. But my question then is, why do they enjoy the cruelty? And further, to your point, that was the Caesar's Legion in Fallout New Vegas that I was talking about. It's literally a whole faction for folks that just enjoy cruelty. It's meant to be that. And you're meant to, if you want to play as the villain and watch cruel things happen in a simulation, that's who you play. And the fact that anybody plays that as a faction, that's how they unwind. It's like folks that pull the wings off flies and watch them struggle. But why? Why do they enjoy the cruelty? And there is the question. There was that experiment, the great mouse utopia. And basically somebody, the name is misleading, somebody essentially created hell for mice and watched what happened. And one of the things that they did was turn on each other. Whenever they got stressed, whenever the stress was turned up, they turned on each other and attacked. And that's, I think, what we're seeing. They don't see a way out of the mouse utopia we've built for ourselves here, or we've allowed to be built around us. So we gotta give them, in reality, what Trump was promising. We have to destroy it, but we don't destroy it by wrecking things. We destroy it by building something better, and we have the ability. But you're quite right if you're thinking it doesn't sound like these folks are going to be very helpful. They're not. By and large, they're not. There are going to be folks on the margins who just got caught up in this and genuinely believe. Like, I take heart that there are people, a few, not many in my opinion, but there are some who genuinely believe the conspiracies. And, you know, you can get them out eventually. But the folks who I think you've correctly identified as just wanting to watch the world burn, they're going to have to see that that's not necessarily the only option for relieving their stress. Mr. Guy, I think they're happy as long as they're not the most miserable. Exactly, I agree. They don't care about boots on their own throats if they can also step on somebody else's throat at the same time. Yeah. Or if somebody else's throat is just getting stepped on harder. Absolutely. Christy Zilkowski, the picture of Emmett Till changed the civil rights movement. Images are powerful. Trying to reason with sociopaths doesn't work. We have to cut through cognitive dissonance and show people reality. True. But that is dealing with folks who are choosing to ignore this, which I will admit is the vast majority. And I think you're right. I have no disagreement there, but I do think it's a different conversation. Wireless Mike, there is no cure for sociopathy. And Christy Zilkowski very much agrees. I think that's true, but I also think that we need to acknowledge that within this group are a lot of people who are genuinely suffering. And I don't think that makes it okay. But I do think that affects how we go about untangling this knot. And look, the plan for now is ignore the knot and just go on with putting up, I guess, the rest of the Christmas lights. But we're going to get to a point where it does untangle. And I think it'll be done as a natural consequence of good governance if we give them one hell of a whooping in the polls. Mars Falcon, for to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Nelson Mandela. Well, damn. Turns out somebody said it better earlier. Story of my life. We got one more for you. It's another piece of good news, paired with some wild speculation. Let's pull this up on this 2 for Tuesday. I very much would like to play this. Because, folks, it doesn't get much better overseas in terms of both pure comedic value and for the people of Ukraine than one of Putin's own oligarchs turning on him. I want to chuckle about this guy ever so quickly. Let's have a gander. As I was telling the wicked Senate, those watching in the live show, it does not get much better than one of Putin's own oligarchs turning on him. In case you're not aware, here's the structure of Russia. When Putin took over, there was an oligarchy in place that had filled the power gap when the Soviet Union collapsed. What Putin did, essentially, was window all of the oligarchs that, what do they call it, defenestrate? All the oligarchs that said they wouldn't or weren't his pals, and everyone that said he would support him, they would support him, they got to keep their stuff. And that was the deal he made with the oligarchy. This also meant he raised up a lot of folks that turned out to be absolute psychopaths. Well, rather interestingly, one of them has turned on him. And I had a thought about this, which I think you're going to see this pan out. It's something to look for going forward. But let's have an update after Prigozhin's coup against Putin, as long as we're on the topic of coup d'etats.
I think it's safe to say that Putin has sided with his military leadership, with Shoigu, with Gerasimov, at least for now. And do you think that that is a mistake by Putin?
You know, Alex, this is so complex. Yes, it's a mistake, bottom line. But Prigozhin is a symptom of a disease. He is not the disease himself. Mr. Putin's government and the way he uses his military and the graft and the corruption of guys like Shoigu and Gerasimov, who have been there for over a decade, are more the disease itself. Prigozhin is just symbolic of what is happening. So when you're talking about trying to address these issues and to fix these things, Mr. Putin just cannot do it, because this is inlaid within the government that is a kleptocratic authoritarian state that is not interested at all in conducting military operations properly or government activities properly.
Matt, I keep thinking about the rank and file Russian soldiers in the trenches in Ukraine. How do you think this impacts the morale of those Russians in Ukraine? And then conversely, how does Ukraine take advantage?
So I think the average soldier in the trench is under no illusions that the war is being badly managed and that the leadership is terrible and is not looking out for their well-being. So the fact that Prigozhin is bringing this not very well-kept secret out into the light does not have much impact on the day-to-day struggle of the Russian soldier fighting in the trenches for his own survival. And as far as how this plays out, I mean, you got Shoigu still sitting in his office in Moscow, and now Prigozhin is exiled off to Belarus or elsewhere. So,
and there it is. So, what happened? Pretty simple. Turns out, Putin had way less control of the oligarchs than we thought. Not our fault for thinking that. He had a whole lot of state media that was working hard to make sure that that impression was kept. But he had less control than we thought. His whole narrative for the war was upended by Prigozhin. When the man made a couple of posts saying, essentially, we've been lied to about why we're here. And it got worse because the best case scenario for Putin would have been, currently there's a Prigozhin's ashes would be in a paper bag somewhere, stuffed in a dumpster. That didn't happen. Prigozhin got all the way to the edge of Moscow, essentially, before turning back, and a negotiation was struck. I got to tell you, it wouldn't have been good for Ukraine if Prigozhin would have been the new czar. Here's what I think you should look for now. Look for really charismatic Russian Ministry of Defense figures. Anybody who's got people with guns under their command. Very charismatic. All of a sudden, lots of social media posts. Being really kind to their soldiers. Being buddy-buddy with them. Hey. Because Putin has just demonstrated that power in Russia is up for grabs. And if you want to know how the invasion of Ukraine ends, it might just be that these tough SOBs in Ukraine have stuck it out long enough that Putin has exhausted his power both militarily and politically. And Putin gets toppled by one of his own guys. That is my hope. It's very simple. But right now, ambitious military folks just realized, number one, this guy from Wagner, who Putin had made it illegal to criticize not 6 months ago, this guy from Wagner got to march troops through Russia against Putin's will and didn't really suffer for it. In fact, he gained what he was looking to gain. Oh boy. Number two, if I just had 5,000 more men on my side, would you rather be, in terms of your political power in Russia, would you rather be one of Putin's generals or Putin? Look for charismatic generals who are palling around with their troops on social media. I bet you're going to see a whole lot of them. And if one of them really sets himself apart from the rest, we might be seeing Swan Lake on TV over in Moscow. The anti-corporatists, it would probably have been better for them, and it's going to be otherwise, having there be a people and having to fight for what has power and not what would be a distraction. Maybe. Wireless mic, hit that like button. Yes, please. Progress now, progress tomorrow, progress forever. Woke George Wallace, 1968. Earth 2. Yeah, I like it. The anti-corporatists, Christy Zolkowski. Let Ukraine join NATO. That'll help speed things along for them, for sure. Unfortunately, NATO being a defensive pact specifically does not let countries which are currently in a war join. And the reason being because then you could get a casus belli, an excuse for war, by simply admitting any old nation that's currently under attack by people you don't like. So I hate to say it, but because the invasion started before Ukraine was a NATO member, Ukraine cannot join unless NATO were to fundamentally change, which it will not, because it's a defensive pact. It cannot join until the war is over. That said, I mean, they have guaranteed membership on the other side of this thing, unless God help us, that's a specific thing Russia negotiates against. That I just don't see it happening. I mean, they're virtually guaranteed to be NATO members following this. And the NATO allies are all but in there with them. I mean, it's NATO calibered ammunition that they're firing. NATO allies are tossing equipment their way. As long as they have the will to fight, they'll have the means. Mars Falcon didn't suffer. I beg to differ. Nobody wants to go to Belarus. Well played. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Only place worse than Russia is White Russia. Boof. I gotta say, side note, if Putin is overthrown, which, fingers crossed, you can expect Lukashenko will be out skis shortly thereafter. He has got threadbare control over his own folks. They despise him. They're right to despise him. He relies heavily on Putin to keep him in power. So we might have a chain reaction of positive events starting in the good old US of A and continuing into Europe, and let's hope around the world. Folks, the good guys are winning. But your old pal Jake's hitting the hay. This has been the second stream in a 2 for Tuesday. Thank you for joining me all the way until Wicked Wednesday. Good God. And this has been WYCD Wicked, that stands for what you can do. My name's Jake, and I'll see you next time.